Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today. Welcome to Imperfect Momming, Sasha.
Hello, everybody. I'm so stoked to be here. And I am Sasha Morozov. I'm a former executive and I have my master's in social work. And now I get to be a life coach for working moms. So any mom that is out there working, killing it at the office, but feel like you're failing at home, I am your girl. I make sure that working moms have more time, less clutter, and habits for a peaceful life, because isn't that what we all want out of life?
Absolutely. I've got a whole acronym for peace. But before we go down that road, were you this energetic when you were an executive, or is this new?
No, I've always been this energetic. That's kind of one of my superpowers, I guess you can say, is the positivity. Honestly, I've had to also learn to tone it down a little bit. I get it, but I feel like life is just better with a smile. You know, it just makes the day go by faster. People just warm up more to you. And I don't know. That's just who I am.
Yeah, I love it. I feed off of the energy.
Yes, we all do, don't we? And that's why when I work with women, they come home and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm drained, I'm drained, I'm drained, I'm drained. It's not necessarily that they're actually drained. It's just everything around them feels like it's closing in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of negative energy out into the world, and you've really got to protect yourself from that negativity. And when I joined a direct sales business 12 years ago, that was one of the first things that they said. It was actually like 14 years ago, the first time I joined it.
Don't age yourself. Don't age yourself.
Right. I'm going to be 40, whatever. But when that was one of the first things that they said is like, protect your mind, turn off the news, listen to Christian radio, and like only listen to positive things, because there's so much negativity out in the world. And I remember, I'm pretty sure I've told this story on the podcast before, but I remember watching the news one day, maybe a year before this all happened, and something happened on the news that I'm not going to say, that like it still affects me, where the rest of the day, and here we are, 20 years later, I'm still saying that's why I don't watch the news. And it hurt my heart so much to know that there are people out there that would do these things, that I'm like, I don't need to know that.
Yes. What I always tell people is that if it was that important, somebody would text me, my partner would tell me, somebody at some point would say something about it. So I don't miss watching the news. I am totally good on that. And you know what? I feel like we already have so many things to think about. If this is one thing that I can clear off my plate, I'm doing it.
Absolutely. 100%. So how did you get from executive to working with moms who are killing it at work and feeling like they're failing at home?
Yes. So, I'll be totally transparent. I'm one of those people that I feel like I've been very fortunate in the career that I was working at. It's something I really enjoyed and loved. I was in the nonprofit field. I love helping people. seeing people change in so many different ways. But what was happening is I was coming home and I was feeling exactly how I said earlier, just drained, overwhelmed, endless to-do list, always feeling like there's something else, something else, something else, something else. And every time I would ask somebody like, hey, is this what you're going through? Hey, is this like, is it normal that like all my weekends are booked with things that like, half the time they're like, like I'm totally fine missing it, but you feel like you go because you should go and people expect you to go, or all of this stuff. And everybody around me was like, yeah, this is exactly how it is. And that's really where I was like, what? Come on. If I, who's, educated and, so privileged in so many ways, get to live this beautiful life. And if I'm not the one enjoying it, like who is? Like, what is happening? I have, family nearby if we want to do a date night. But we don't even do date nights that much, right? It's like, I think God have healthy kids that we can do so many more things with. But half the time we don't, because it's just like a crazy runaround of school activity. And then I really had to think about, what is it that I'm doing? How am I showing up in the world? What is it that I want and that I'm most skilled at? And it's really this, I miss the one-on-one connection with people. I miss the fact that, like, in your own business, you're able to have so much more flexibility and build it the way that you want. So that was really my journey into owning my own business, into being a life coach for moms, and just being able to say, yes, I get it. It is hectic. Yes, I understand. And you're probably doing too much. I think that's been the biggest thing, is that you're probably already doing too much. Because what happens is people come to me and tell me that they still feel guilty they're not doing enough X or enough Y or enough Z. And I just say to them, but you're already doing more than 100 things, more than 100%, more than 24 hours in a day. So of course, how do you expect to fit this in? I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to fit it in, but we are going to sit here and figure out what we can take off your plate, because that's where it really needs to start.
Because you're already doing A through W. Like,
yes, like, and we beat ourselves up, and we still beat ourselves up over it.
We don't need to do XYZ. We're doing A through W already. Like, let somebody else do XYZ.
Yes, I always tell my clients, which is that you can have it all, but it's just going to look different than what you imagine. Because having it all is not being a perfect mother, perfect wife, bazillionaire like business person, and like the best body, like all of these things that we kind of assume needs to fit in. But in reality, it's really about, what are our values? What is it that we want? What is it that we just want in our life to make it feel like we have the peace, to make it feel like we have that freedom? I bet it's not having that perfect body and super diet and going out to, Hollywood events at night, every night, and all of this stuff that like maybe we see and we're like, oh, how come they do this? Or, hey, why not? Sometimes I look at, social, and I'm like, well, I'm glad that's not me, because that would have been a lot more effort than I'm willing to put in. And, by 9 o'clock, I'm in bed. I'm so good with that.
Yeah. I really think that people underestimate the power of their values and their priorities. Like, it's not something that we talk about growing up. Like, our parents don't talk about, your values, and you got to prioritize like the things that are important to you. Like, we just play follow the leader, and most people aren't like thinking about what's important to me, and let's build my life around what's important to me.
Yes, because we're so stuck in the reactive.
Yeah.
We're so stuck in there. We're so stuck in coming home. What's for dinner? Okay. Did you do your homework? Okay. Maybe I have 5 minutes to myself. Maybe I'll put on Netflix, and, oh, I need to shower. Oh, I need to answer this work email. We're so stuck in this reactive, instead of before walking in the door and saying, what do I want my evening to look like? And saying, you know what, tonight, I don't care if they did homework, one night of checking homework, versus like, tonight, I want us to have that just family time. So instead of sitting there and arguing about this or that, I'm going to walk in the door and say, hey guys, let's order something. Let's have some family time. Right? Like to
Yeah.
me, the second sounds so much better. And that
Mhm.
doesn't mean, but that does mean that something's going to be let go, right? Which may be like getting to bed on time or, checking that homework, like I said, all of those things. And it doesn't mean one is bad or one is good. It's just, what do you want? Maybe on Monday you feel one way, maybe on Tuesday you feel a different way. And that's okay too. It's just understanding where you're at and what you need and what your family is looking for as well. Because I'll give you an example. Like last week, I noticed my older son, he was just kind of grumpy, like a few mornings in a row. But if I wasn't conscious and taking the time to like think about my day, I probably would have missed that he's pretty grumpy a few days in a row. But that's not his normal. Like normally in the mornings, he's totally like, okay, fine, let me eat, let me do this, get out, go to school, blah blah. But I just noticed something and I was like, you know what? He's probably not going to be like, yes, mom, of course I'm grumpy. I'm not sure what's going on. Let's have an intellectual. No. But what I did instead is that I just showed up to, he goes to after school. So I showed up to after school earlier and just said, hey, you know what? I feel like we just haven't been seeing eye to eye a little bit in the mornings. Let's just go get some ice cream. Just mommy and you time. That's it. Just as a way to kind of refill our tanks, to be able to just connect. Because I think one of the things, instead of what happens, is that we're so in the react and we're like, he's grumpy. Oh, he's going to be grumpy tomorrow. And he's going to, and then we're just going to get into fights and fights and fights versus like, hey, how can we create the space and time to just really enjoy each other's company?
Absolutely. Like that's it. That's the opposite of reaction parenting. That's like like proactive. That's the word I'm looking for. Proactive parenting, where you have a mother's intuition, like we all have that. And we know that there's something that's off. And, depending on how a lot of people just think, well, they're a teenager, so they're just this is how they are now. So we're just going to have grumpy mornings forever. And I had a similar situation with my son, and we talked about it as well. And it turned out that he felt he wasn't getting enough, time with me, and because he likes snuggle time with me. And that's, we talk about, how do you fill your love bucket? Like, is your love bucket full? And it took us a little bit to get to that point, but I asked him, how's your love bucket? And he said, actually, it feels kind of empty right now. And I said, well, what can we do to fill it? And he said, I just want to snuggle with you. And, the beauties of having a 10-year-old that's in touch with his emotions, but he's not that grumpy puss in the morning anymore.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And don't get me wrong, none of us are perfect. So there's absolutely things that I miss. Or I'll give you a great example from this morning, because I took my 4-year-old to the dentist and I should know better, but I didn't and realize it until after, which is I should have prepared him better for what the dentist is going to look like. My 4-year-old is a wild child. So instead, what happened is that I'm there with the dentist, and he's literally, because they're like holding him down with his like hands, to like get in his mouth. And now he's trying to like kick him, and he's like throwing his shoes, like, oh, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. But afterwards, I told my partner, I said, man, I really should have taken some time ahead of time to be like, this is what it's going to look like. And it's not even his first time there, but it's just, I should have known better, right? But I'm just going to look at it and laugh and know that next time we go to the dentist, to make sure the like 2 days before we're talking about it, we're practicing on a stuffed animal, all of these kind of little tips and tricks to make it go smoother. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, my child, I can't believe he's misbehaving this way, right? Like we all kind of have these tendencies, and don't be wrong, I was definitely embarrassed, but I was like, he's 4, that's my child, he's a wild man,
Yeah.
instead of like being almost like ashamed and blaming him,
Yeah. Yeah. My son was in a program at the age of, 4 or 5. I mean, he was there from 2 to about 5, where early intervention for autism and whatnot. And he was going to fly on a plane. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. So you guys like prepare him for this. And it was the coolest thing I've ever seen, where they just like came up behind him and they're like, okay, we're getting ready to take off. And they started shaking the chair like turbulence. And I was like, what a cool way of preparing a kid for taking a flight by himself, because he had a companion, but it's not mom and it's not dad and it's not grandma and grandpa. Like, it's not anybody that he knows. It's just some person who's, sort of watching him while he's on the flight. And so he had a better experience because of that preparation. And so we sometimes have to pull ourselves out of a situation where we're like, okay, how is a kid going to feel about this? And we can't always do that. We, like you said, but we also don't have to beat ourselves up for not doing it.
Yes. And that's why I'm so passionate about coaching, because a lot of times we're in it. It's our kids. We're not going to see it. We're not going to see it. Okay. Unless you do a lot of really good self-coaching and years and like all of this stuff. That's why I feel like when you have a coach, whoever it may be, or a mentor, or somebody that is a positive role model in your life that you can talk to about this, you're able to see it from a different point of view. Like, I'll give you another example, since you mentioned earlier about my positivity. So my child has some learning differences, and it wasn't until his therapist said to me, "You're too positive for him." He literally said, "You're too." I was like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm like his number one fan. Like, I'm like, yes, you can do it." He's like, "But he can't see that. He's too negative. Like, bless his soul, he's just not a positive. He's not." At this point anyway, still he's not someone that sees the bright side of things, put it that way, and has a lot of emotional regulation and stuff like that. But he was like, he cannot see when you're in the mornings and you're like, "Good morning, how are you?" He thinks it's almost like an act. He thinks that it's almost like too much, because for him it's too much. And that way, it was really, I never realized, that it was actually affecting our relationship. So now I'm much more mindful of the way that I am, and mornings are, just a little bit slower, a little bit more soothing, a little bit, like when he gets in the car after school, I'm not like, "How's your day? What's going on?" Which I would love to do, but I'm more like, "Okay, hello," give him a minute to kind of breathe, ask if he's hungry, all things like that. So yeah, parenting's a wild ride.
It's real, and it's really hard being a positive morning person when you're surrounded by people that are not positive morning people. Like, you're just like, "Good morning, I'm so excited that today," like, and especially I'll get up an hour or two before everyone else. So I've had 2 whole hours where like my brain is going, I've got my cups of coffee inside, and like I'm just going and things are flowing and I'm excited. And everybody else is just waking up and they're not morning people on top of it. So I feel your pain.
Yes, yes, but we get through it. And
Yeah.
I think, outside of parenting, it's also that self-reflection on yourself. And, instead of being like, "Oh, this is just how I am, and it's good to be positive," and all this, is just understanding of what the child's needs are, and how we're the parents, we're the ones that need to adjust to what they need. And it's our responsibility, in my viewpoint, to making sure that we're providing for what they need in their, kind of how you said, the love bucket,
Yeah.
and making sure that they have those opportunities. So that way it doesn't feel for them that, "Oh, I'm not positive, that means something's wrong with me."
Yeah, for sure. A couple episodes ago, I took a TikTok that one of my mom friends sent me, and it was I believe she's the creator of Grey's Anatomy, and she was talking about how she does it all as a working mom and as a mom as well. And she's like a single working mom. So, they're like, how do you do it all? And she says, okay, I'm going to give you the secret. I don't. But then, so I dissected her, it was a 2-minute TikTok, but I just dissected her little speech and what I agreed with and disagreed with. And one of the things that really hurt me to hear her say was that when she's succeeding over here, she's failing over here. And it's like, oh, that's such a harsh word, where you don't have to fail over here because you're succeeding over here. You can prioritize. One of the examples she gave was about, missing her daughter's first swim lesson. Well, schedule it a different time when you can show up if you don't want to miss it. But if it's not important to you, then don't beat yourself up over not going to see her first swim lesson. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. I also say a lot of times to clients, especially clients that are transitioning back to work after having a baby, which is the fact that you're not choosing your career over your child. You're not. And I feel like it's this constant mom guilt of where we need to like justify, oh, well, I'm only working because I need to, or, that for some reason that we can't be excited about our careers, or we can't be successful. If we're successful, that means that we're not a good mother in some other aspects. When in reality, if I were to say something to her, I would say, why is it wrong that sometimes your work is the priority? And why is it not okay to miss the first swim lesson? Did you get a video? Could you ask somebody to videotape her? There you go. What is it about missing that first swim lesson that is really powerful, that is still a memory to this day? So those are the type of questions where I think we can really start to unravel some of like our deep-seated beliefs about who we're supposed to be, or why we're supposed to be doing things and not others as well.
Yeah. My dad passed away recently, and I was trying to remember if he had come to my dance recitals when I was little. And my mom can't remember. I can't remember. My aunt was, I went with my cousin, and my aunt was the one that drove us to practice and everything. So I asked her, and she goes, I don't recall your dad being there. And I thought, I bet we didn't even tell him about it. Like I bet like it was my job to tell him, and it wasn't important enough for me that he was there at that age. Later on in life, it was important to me that he showed up to things and he was there. So it's like we put our this pressure on, I'm not at my kid's first swim lesson, but did your kid want you to be there? Like, was that a burning desire for them, for you to be there? And if it was, then you can change your schedule or change swim schools or something, or video it or do something where you're participating in the swim lesson in a way that meets their emotional need. And, we feel like we have to be at everything and do everything all the time, but it's like, it's not always important to them. It might be, and if it's important to you, then show up.
Yes, but it's also what happens when everything's important to you. That's what I say, then nothing's important. Then you get lost in the sea. And that's when it still really comes down back to priorities. Okay, we all have the same amount of hours in a day. Right. So how is it that we're not making the most out of it? And instead, we're just spending so much of our time either comparing ourselves or feeling guilty about things and just feeling like we're drowning. Like, when is enough? Enough is enough. We are amazing superhumans. We are moms. Being a mom as it is huge. Yeah. And we do so much for others. And the last thing I want is exactly what you're saying, of somebody feeling like, oh, I was at a career thing or a business meeting or whatever, I missed their first this, right? Would we say the same thing about a father? And it just comes down to that. Why is it okay for somebody else and not for you?
Right.
And again, exactly you say, like, it's all about prioritization. Like, I am totally fine to miss my kid's first swim lesson. I missed my kid's like first soccer game because it was at 8 a.m. and my partner was like, you can sleep in, I'll go. I was like, awesome. This is his first soccer game ever. I'm like, whatever, there'll be others. I got some rest, right? But for somebody else, they're like there at like 7:30 with like the camera on. God bless. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with me sleeping in because it was a Saturday instead. There isn't. It's just about the choices that we make. And I just want to make sure that women are making the choices for themselves, not based on anything else. And it's hard because that means not just knowing what you want, but standing up for what you want. Because we have so many people and so many different opinions that are coming at us all the time. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. Oh, did you sign up your kid for this? Or do you know this is going on? All the time. And it takes a lot to like cut through the noise. And it takes a lot to just say, hey, you know what? That's not for me. Or that would be great. Maybe a different time, and really set those boundaries.
Yeah. And I have another mom friend that, every time I talk about the activities that my son is in, and he's really just in two, like basketball and gymnastics. And he's really passionate about both. And so he's in both. And she says, man, I'm like, I'm such a bad mom, not her exact words, but I'm such a bad mom because you put all your son in so many programs. And it's like, well, number one, I have one kid and I don't have a full-time job. And you have 3 kids and a full-time job. Like, if I had 3 kids and a full-time job, I'm pretty sure none of them would be doing anything. I know my energy level with those factors. I don't think that that my kids would be anything. And I wouldn't think that the activities were as important because they have the community of each other, right?
Yes.
They have their siblings and they play with each other and they're socializing and all of that stuff. My son is an only child and we live in the middle of nowhere where we don't have neighbors. So if we don't go to a program where he can interact with other kids, the only interaction he has is virtual. And that's not okay with me.
Yes.
So that's like the difference in my opinion. And that's why it's important to me.
Yes. And also, just to add on to that for that mom, it's also, this is where, I do a lot of work around with women, is the fact that that mom is probably feeling that she needs to be the one that's at all these activities. She needs to be the one that organizes it. She needs to be the one that takes care of all of it, which is where I say there's such a big difference. Like, it takes a village. Like we say it, and we say it as this, like, oh, it takes a village, right? But how many of us really do try to build that village? How many of us have, the mom that we can call to be like, hey, you know what? Your kid's in this, my kid's in this. How about you take them one time, I take them another, so that way there's a little more flexibility. How many of us have lived near family even? You don't need to live near family, but like, how many of us have people that you can call on, and who are you involving in your village as well? Especially for a kid that, may have some learning differences or has some special needs. It takes everybody to be on the same page. The teacher, the coach, if you have a coach, all of these things. And who does it really fall on? A lot of times it falls on the mother to make sure that everyone's on the same page, right? But that's where I say, hold on. How can we lessen the load? How can we make sure that others that are active participants in your life, in your child's life, are able to also take on some of these activities? Because I truly believe our partners, if you have a partner in the home, it's not that they don't want to, they really don't know how. They need maybe more direction. They need maybe more specific ways that their help is needed. And that's where we can also do some of the work ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that post COVID, my village has gotten smaller. But 100%, her son and my son are 2 months apart. And if he wanted to be part of basketball or gymnastics with my son, I'd be more than happy to pick him up and take him. And I don't know. I know for sure he's not into basketball, but I don't know how he feels about gymnastics. But I feel like, my humble opinion, don't get mad at me if you're listening, that the purse strings are just a little bit tight around that family. And I don't see, I'm not in it all the time, but I don't see their village. And they're kind of a one-man show. We have mom and dad and 3 kids, but they're kind of a one-man show where, this is their family unit. And I don't know that there's people outside of the family unit that they depend on. And I'm like, as a single mom, I needed the village because I was dealing with the depression of splitting up from this relationship, that I didn't have a baby so that I could move on with my life, would take a baby and leave. Like, I was building a family, and that, it didn't work out. And so I had to adjust. But I needed that support while I was adjusting. And that's why I'm the mom support coach, because I needed the support.
Yes, we all do. That's the thing. We all need support. It just may look different. And that's all. And some people have great partners, and they have calendars and, color coded calendars of like, this is you, this is me. Amazing. That is not my family, but that's somebody else's, and that works for them. Awesome. And some people really don't have that village, right? And that is one of the biggest things. Like, if you look on my website, my number one thing that comes up when you open the website, it's on a mission to build a community of working moms who are taking their lives to the next level at home. Because I truly believe in community. Because there's something so special when you just hear about somebody going through something similar as you are. Even it doesn't mean that they need to cook for you or pay for your kids' activities or anything like that, but just being able to connect, to emotionally support one another is huge, absolutely huge, and really something that is so missing in today's society. We're really built on a way of this is your family, you figure it out. You want an IEP for school, you want this, you need to navigate the system, and you need to be the advocate to just get basic services for your kids and all of this, versus hey, we're all coming together to support one another. Because guess what? Sometimes you're going to have greater needs. Sometimes I'm going to have greater needs. And when that happens, be there for one another.
Absolutely. Is there a piece of advice that you want to share with our moms?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I often get asked about is the self-care. How do I make more time for self-care? How do I, do all this? So I always say, start simple, start small. I want you to think about and pick 30 minutes to an hour, sometime within the next week. Mark it on your calendar. You can find 30 minutes, okay? You can find 30 minutes. And then put down in that same calendar note and description, put down 3 things that you would like to do in those 30 minutes. And I say 3 things, not because you're going to do all 3, but because one of the things I always notice, especially with habits with women, not just women, with habits with anybody, is the fact that when they start something, and let's say they want to do yoga, right? And that I love yoga, or meditate, to hike, whatever, right? This feel good. And they say, okay, but I did it 1 week, it was great. I did it the second, but the third, then I was I was tired and I didn't do it. We fall off the bandwagon. And when I say to people, well, I think that's normal. They're like, what? I say, yes, because you're not a robot. okay? Because every Thursday at 2 o'clock does not mean that you're going to want to suddenly do yoga, okay? Maybe the first week, that's what you were feeling. Maybe the second week, you're like, that felt good. But by third week, you're like, this is not what my body or mind needs right now. That's why I say pick 3 things, 5 at the most, but 3. So that way you have a couple of choices. So instead of just saying, I just don't feel like it, and then feeling guilty that you didn't do something for yourself, and I'm not being like, why am I not motivated to do yoga, all of this stuff, and say, okay, you know what, maybe yoga's one, maybe a nap is another, and maybe just, calling a friend is a third, whatever it is. But that way you are able to still go through it that time. And more importantly is the fact that you time blocked it, the fact that you put it on the calendar and you have some options. So it's not like if it's Thursday at 2 and you're like, wait, what am I gonna do? Oh, I don't know what I want to do. I guess I won't do anything. You still have those like 3 options, and at least you can pick from one of those, because you're really not a robot. And I don't want you to act like a robot. I want you to enjoy your life. And sometimes you're gonna have different needs, and that's okay. So give yourself some grace and have fun.
Yeah, I like that, because it's more like a self-care strategy instead of self-care routine. I was really good at going for a walk every day for several months, because my commitment was I can buy this Samsung watch if I go for a walk and I hit my steps every single day. And I did that for a while, and then it was just like, ugh, I don't want to go for a walk anymore. Like it got boring. But if I had, today I took a nap. I was on a conference call that I didn't need to be like visible on, and so I turned the Vit camera off and I laid down and I fell right asleep while the speaker was talking. And it's like, I needed that, and I don't feel guilty about it, and it's recorded, so I'll go back and rewatch it. I rewatch all the recordings anyway, so it's fine. And and I like to cross stitch, and I've gone months without cross stitching, and yesterday I cross stitched, and it was like, oh, it feels so good, because that project's almost done and I just bought a new project to start.
Yes,
So
I love that.
So I needed to finish it, and I was feeling a little bit blah about this project. So I'm really glad that it's almost over. But having several things that you like to do is a really good strategy for self-care, and obviously, and having it on your calendar. Whatever puts on your calendar typically gets done. And if it doesn't, then somebody else is going to fill that time for you.
Yep. And that's the thing. That's the way to be proactive versus reactive. And that's kind of one of my tricks that I do for business, is that either the night before or the morning before I start my day, if I just start my day and open email, I'll get lost in the emails, and then I'll start to think about this, think about that. But instead, if I start my day by like, okay, what's 2 or 3 things that are important for me today to do? And I write that down before I open anything up, before I start my day in any way. I'm way more likely to do and stay focused on those 2 to 3 things than if I open up email and then get caught up like, I need to reply to this person, or this is going on, and blah, 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 blah. And then it's just like, and now it's like, wait, it's 1 p.m. How did this happen?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think that when you're starting off as, I want to be happier, I want to be more at peace, so I'm going to follow what Sasha says, or I'm going to follow what Alicia says. But I think the most difficult part of this journey is trying different things to figure out what it is that you like.
Yes.
And what I think is a really good idea is, what did you enjoy doing before you had kids? Like, when your time was yours and pretty much only yours, unless you had a partner that you commingled your time with. But like, when your time was your time, what did you do to relax? What did you do to take care of yourself? What did you do to zone out or to lift yourself up? Like start there. And if you never did that, then, take Sasha's suggestion, take my suggestion, whatever it is, and try something and try it for a couple of weeks. Because when we do new things, they don't always feel comfortable the first time that we do them. So give it a couple of tries. When I started journaling again, I absolutely hated it because it was uncomfortable to be alone with my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I had spent so much time running from that. And here I was trying to do that.
Yes.
So it was uncomfortable, but now I love it. And it's like, I feel sad when I don't do it for a couple of days, and then I'll come back and start doing it again. So this feels uncomfortable and weird, I don't like it. Like sometimes those are the things that are the best.
Yes. For any change you're looking to make, if you're truly committed to it, you're gonna go through tough times to get there. The more committed, the more change you want to make, the harder the journey will be. Because if it was that easy, we'd all be doing it. If it was that easy to be a size 2, we'd all be doing it. If it was that easy to, raise Nobel Prize winners, we'd all be doing it. All right. So doesn't mean that any of those are markers of success or anything like that. But that's where, again, it all comes back to what are your priorities. And if you are clear and you're really grounded in that, nothing's going to get in your way. Because then no matter how hard things are today, you're seeing the vision where you want to be, and that's going to ground you and keep you going, and you'll get there. And then the fog will start to clear up. You'll start to understand, oh, this is what this, and your thoughts are going to make more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a book that's been instrumental in your growth journey?
Yes. So one of the things I do as a life coach is I focus on 4 main areas, which is self, home, relationships, and habits. Those are the only things I work with clients on. So I'll give you a book recommendation, one for each. So for self, I have loved Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass. Oh my goodness. That is my book no matter where we travel. I always bring along because I can just turn to any page and read and get inspired. If you want to improve your life at home and really try to create more of that home life that's exceptional, the Happiness Project is my best recommendation for that. In terms of relationships, if you have a partner in the home, the best book that I can recommend, in my opinion, is called Fair Play by Eve Brodsky. And then in terms of habits and better getting into the groove of habits is Atomic Habits. So those are actually 4 book recommendations. They're all fabulous. And I highly, highly encourage anybody listening to go out and grab one.
All right. So I think that I've had a couple of rebels on the show where I ask for a book and I get more than one, but you by far have surpassed them all because you gave me 4.
I can't help it. I specialize with 4 things, and I feel like those are the 4 areas of your life to really focus on to bring out the best. So I want to share the recommendations for all.
Did you know that Jen Sincero has You're a Badass at Building Habits?
Oh, what?
I think that's book number 4, if I'm not mistaken. Like she has You're a Badass at Making Money, You're a Badass Daily, which I don't think counts as a book, no offense, Jen, but like it was like quotes that I was super disappointed. Anyway, and then You're a Badass at Building Habits or Creating Habits or something like that. So
I gotta check that out. I gotta check that one out.
Yeah, I hadn't.
Love it. See, you gave me a book recommendation.
Exactly. And I don't think that I had actually finished it because I couldn't think of what habit I wanted to build. So
details.
details, whatever. But I was like, I have all of her books. I'm very loyal to authors. So if there's somebody that I like, then I get all of their books. Like I love J.K. Rowling. So I have all of her books. I have not read anything but the Harry Potter ones, but I still buy all of her books because I'm crazy. I actually had to put a limit on buying books now. Like I can only buy Kindle books because I have too many books on my shelf, and the ones that I actually want to read, they have to be with me at all times or they're not getting read. And so I just read them on my phone.
Okay.
So
Nice.
Yeah,
exactly.
you got to figure out what works for you, right?
Exactly. Instead of being like, oh, I left the book at home. Oh, it's on my shelf. Like, how can we get rid of those obstacles? How can we keep it as simple as possible, such as just having it on your phone?
Yeah. And it hurts me. It hurts my heart because I love books. I've had a love for books my whole life. I think I got that from my dad. He has a beautiful library in his office that's like just all the books that were really instrumental to him in his life. And I have that love for books, but it's just like, it's a lot of work and upkeep to dust them, and I feel like I never get back to them, but I don't want to get rid of them because they have sentimental value. And I'm like, I want to minimize my stuff. And
we could definitely do a whole episode on that conversation as well.
Well, I do appreciate you being here today and pouring into my listeners and to me. And where can we find you?
Sure. Well, if you're a working mom, head on over to SashaXHome.com and you can download the 5 steps to coming home happy after work today. So that way you can already start your day, end your day a little bit lighter and a little bit brighter. So thank you guys.
Oh, that's so cute. I just love everything about you. So I appreciate you being here. And but we will have another episode of Imperfect Momming next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye.
Woo woo.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.